What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or for the first time if you're new, I'm Sylvan, and today I'm going to be reacting to Chasca's character trailer, Feather-Fletched Peace. I'm really interested to get into this. I'm looking forward to her coming out, as well as just everything else in the new version, so I won't belabor this too much. I'm curious to see if they're going to continue with the sort of Western vibe that they seem to have been doing, but either way, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and let's get into it. Ooh.
A peacemaker's job.
Okay, immediately into
is to resolve conflicts.
Ooh. Guitar drums.
It can cost a little more.
I'm loving the style of this.
A little wine. Maybe a little dignity. And sometimes a few bullets.
Fair.
But whatever it takes to get a
The music
resolution,
sounds like it's Fontaine
right?
music almost. God to gun. Ooh, bass.
Whatever's going on here. How about we talk it out?
Oh, okay.
It's an open and shut case. We know these Tepetlosaurs stole the gems. Greedy little things, huh? Huh. Everyone's been turning on each other thanks to them.
Oh, really? Well, the stolen gems were transported with a spice shipment.
Wow, all the music
And
flows
I don't
out pretty
smell
much.
any spices here. But your frame job? Now that I can smell a mile away.
Oh, the whistle. Oh yeah, this is totally Western. It's the quick draw. Ooh, yeah, that's the guitar. I'm liking the lighting here. They've been really good with the lighting recently. Love the heartbeat. Oh, okay. They have their own Saurians. Ah, escape tactic,
In the
okay.
sky.
But she has a gun. Oh, it's so goofy and I love it. Ooh, going into the eye and then it being the barrel. Nice. This is fun. A fucking aerial battle. Ooh. What?
Conflict resolved.
Ooh, nice lighting.
Sometimes you gotta do things the old-fashioned way.
Hell yeah. This is a very solid one. It's not as distinct as necessarily something like Xylonin's was, but it is very in line with the aesthetic that they've been going for with Chasca. It works perfectly for her and what the deal of her character is. Starting off here, what surprises me is that they just immediately right away give us her art. They didn't mix it into somewhere in the middle of the trailer like they usually do. And in this first bit of it, pretty much until it gets into the like Western standoff into the whole aerial battle, the music very much, as I mentioned, gives me more Fontaine vibes. Specifically, this opening bit with like the horns and the build and stuff immediately makes me think of, I believe it's Charlotte's trailer, which has a very similar introduction bit. Beyond that, it becomes more distinct, but it just is very much similar to that, which I suppose when you've made like 60 trailers or whatever it is at this point, I'm not even keeping track anymore, you're gonna have some musical overlap, and the rest of it is distinct enough, so it's fine. It's just interesting because they've had a very distinct musical style for like each of the areas, with Natlan sort of being the most eclectic in the sense that they've more so been going to music that fits individual characters more so than it does the region they're from, if that makes sense. But regardless, the first line we have from Chasca, a peacemaker's job is to resolve conflicts. Immediately starting off with her being a peacemaker. that being her role in Natlan, which they emphasize both here and in her teaser, and occasionally in the story itself. Something I find interesting for this initial bit is how the style of it is, because it has this constantly moving, energetic feel as we cut between these moving paneled shots of just like different parts of her outfit, her vision, her face, her hat, all that kind of stuff, as the guitar comes in, and that's where really her music becomes more distinct. We get some shots of a random tribesperson, looks like from the Children of Echoes, someone else, some face-offs, fighting happens. I love the color choice here to have the people mostly in grayscale, but then like the more colorful elements of them still there, matching and contrasting with the background colors of using exclusively red and yellow, and the red and yellows of the outfits being the only colors in the characters themselves, and specifically choosing to then mirror that so that the reds are on the yellow side and the yellows are on the red side, just gives this a very solid visual flair that makes everything just sort of pop. And then Chasca continues from her initial statement, explaining that her job is to resolve conflicts, but that can cost some things. Sometimes it can cost a little more. She flips the gem we see later in the demo. A little wine, it falls into a mug of wine, or maybe a little dignity, as we see the fighting again, as some glass shatters behind them, all centered around the impact of the two weapons, with the conflict of these two reflected in the broken glass. Same sort of color style going on, but a bit more muted. And what I gather from these lines is rather simple, it's pretty straightforward. It's just simply the idea that to resolve a conflict isn't as simple as just saying, hey, calm down, guys. People will not be happy or accept the circumstances of a negotiation unless you give them a reason to. Now, that reason in Chasca's case might be the threat of force, but she firsthand is acknowledging maybe you can pay someone off, settle a deal that way, maybe you can over some drinks settle things, or maybe you need to convince someone to just sort of suck it up and accept defeat or whatever, or just, you know, let go of their dignity for a moment, their pride. But then we have a fun transition as what initially is like this yellow bordering, these yellow lines basically, moving by to sweep across the frame and move us to a next scene, becomes stripes on the ground as Chasca runs. As she runs, words and sentences fly by her. A lot of random little phrases that I assume don't really mean much or have much relevance to anything, but are all vaguely in line with concepts of flight and the wind, which makes sense for her as an animo character and having been raised by, I believe it's the Cuckoosaurus, the ones with the wings that can fly. But then as she bursts through the glass, repeating that visual, she finishes her statement from before of what it can take to negotiate for peace with what we know is one of her main solutions, sometimes a few bullets. The threat of violence does wonders to keep people in check. And then we get a shot of her shooting like half a dozen arrows all at once into that same fight we were seeing before. She broke through the glass and into this red-yellow split zone and rains arrows down on both sides to stop the fighting. And then on both sides of the shot, we get these panels of, I would gather, the two leaders of these two groups, much like how we were getting in her teaser. And we see then in the middle that they are shaking hands in some kind of agreement, but their expressions show that they are still really angry at each other, really tense. They aren't wanting to do this. But Chasca's in the background looming over, her shadow the only distinct thing other than the colors in the background. And finishing out her statement from before, she says, but whatever it takes to get a resolution, right? So what if I shot that guy? So what if I threatened to kick his teeth in? It was all in the name of peace. That's her view. If she can, she'll try the other options. But at the end of the day, she knows that the best way for her to settle a disagreement is to threaten both of them. And this handshake here is essentially signifying proof of her methods working, or at least it seems that way, until Red Guy over here, he lets go of the handshake, wrestling his hand free, as the other guy looks at him in surprise, and Red Guy turns, his panel moving out to fill the screen, panning over Chasca, as well as the other guy. Angrily and aggressively, he pivots to face Chasca, clearly not accepting this deal, not willing to stand down, but Chasca's shadow still looms over him. And it's with this that she points at him, and we pull out, and her gun forms mechanically slotting into place really satisfyingly, the music matching up with it as a shot is fired. And then we turn to the main scenario of the entire trailer. That initial 40 seconds is essentially just setting up the premise of Chasca, a person who seeks peace through the most violent means, someone who exists as a bit of a contradiction in herself, but is comfortable within that. But now we get into the actual narrative of the trailer. Here we see, as has become expected and common in all of Chasca's content, a standoff that she is about to interrupt. But interestingly, where the one in the initial portion of this, as well as in her teaser, were one tribe against another, one gang against another, this one is a group of thugs against some baby saurians, not even adults, which just immediately, with the size difference and everything, paints the picture of who's the people in the wrong and who are the victims of this scenario. It's not a complex situation where we don't know whose side to be on. There is 3 people menacing some baby animals. Pretty straightforward. Initially, when I saw this, I thought they were going to be like poachers or something. But then we have moving in from behind the camera, Chasca, as she calls out to them saying, whatever's going on here, how about we talk it out? It seems like she always enters these scenarios offering to talk, to negotiate. Not that she expects it to work, but she always offers the platitude. We pan over to the Saurians, as we have one of the thugs speak up and just laugh, saying it's an open and shut case. We know these Petlosaurs stole the gems. Greedy little things, huh? Simultaneously setting up that maybe this is more complicated than it is. Maybe the Saurians actually did do something wrong. But even if they did, the way he's talking and the way he's framed paints him as the bad guy. The way the shot is a little lower than him, so it's looking up at him, almost giving us the perspective of the Petlosaurs, as well as his cocky laugh and his dismissal of there being any need for negotiations, leads us to still see him as a villain figure, an antagonist. And then he sighs and finally turns to Chasca, attempting to speak reason to her, saying that everyone's been turning on each other thanks to them. We're just doing a service. We've caught the criminals. And there's that moment of pause, the rise of the strings, and then it punches in onto Chasca again, and she goes, "Oh, really?" The music is almost completely gone. There's just the one string ringing out as she explains her perspective on all this, saying, well, the stolen gems were transported with a spice shipment. The music is completely gone. There's some sounds of nature as a single guitar comes in. And I don't smell any spices here, as she pulls out the gem from earlier. And then we cut to the crystal itself. The 3 thugs reflected in it in multiple ways, distorted by the shape of the crystal, as they grimace and scowl. And Chasca reveals their true intentions. But your frame job? Now that I can smell a mile away. The perspective we've been shown of these people is correct. They are the villains of this scenario. They are thieves who tried to pin their crimes on innocent animals, baby animals. And then we pan around to the leader of the thugs, who just glowers at her as there's this whistle that comes in. And this shot is just one of the most Western things you could do. The way the dust is moving, Chasca's hand at her thigh. If she had a pistol holstered there, it would be perfect. The guitar is the only real sound other than that whistle. And the 3 thugs just ready for a fight already. But it's just this standoff. Who's gonna draw first? Who's gonna make the first shot? We get this moment of tension. We get the introduction of a Kukasaur in the sky, which both serves as a fitting image for the entire scenario, a bird overhead, but also serves to set up that these thugs are going to try to make an escape with their Kukasaurs. And then, as we look at all of them up close, a heartbeat begins to become one of the main rhythms. Close-ups on their eyes as the heartbeat intensifies. He whistles, the Kukasaurs come in, the guitar comes in, the music builds, and as they fly away, he laughs, thinking that he's outdone himself, escaped from her. But then we cut to her, she just laughs and mounts her gun. As she says, in the sky, there's nowhere to hide. She's naturally someone who lives in the sky. She flies better than anyone else. Riding her gun, holding the reins as if it was a, chariot or something. All the instruments have fully come in now. We have some more people shooting at her from the ground. And then it's here where we have a really fun transition that I pointed out during the initial reaction, where we hear zoom in on her eye, and it becomes a barrel of a gun. A bullet shoots out, she catches it in her fingers, twirls it, and then we become the reticle of her gun. Just a fun little transition there. I like how it moves, how it flows. And then the reticle of the gun here shows that she's about to take out the people on the ground, but also shows to give us a hint towards her actual kit. At this point, these trailers basically aren't showing off the kits at all. For a long time, that hasn't been the case. Perhaps that's the reason why they started calling them trailers rather than demos, but they always still hint towards the kit. And this is one of those first real examples of that. She takes the shot, some bullets shoot out, hitting each of the people individually as she bursts through the smoke. The horns are coming in massively. The guy breaks apart part of the mountain. She jumps around, avoiding it all, and then a massive rock is coming at her. We cut away as there's just this plume of dust to show this guy once again laughing, thinking he's gotten away from her finally, but he clearly hasn't learned his lesson. It didn't work last time, it won't work this time. As he then looks up, and she is in the sun. She is just flying herself. Arms spread wide. She is the master of the sky. And then we get the shot of her ult as straight down the bullets come after we see just these fun shots of her, following the perspective of the bullet, the explosion, as we return to the two Saurians, sort of surprised and looking up to the sky of what's going on. And then as we hear the man fall to the ground, his weapon clattering, Chasca says, "Conflict resolved." As we then cut to her looking down at the guy, but based on her perspective, it becomes also looking down at us, as the sun has begun to set and gives everything a golden hue, which is very in line with Western stuff. She claps her hands clean, and she walks off into the sunset. Nothing but the hand of the man twitching. As she says, sometimes you gotta do things the old-fashioned way. You can try to negotiate, but at the end of the day, pulling a gun on someone is always a good solution. Or at least that's what she says. I'm not exactly a big fan of saying that, but it's very solid for her character. It works really well for her. And that's how they close it out. Like I say, I really enjoy this trailer. It's really straightforward, just this continuous narrative after this brief introduction to her, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It knows the aesthetic it's going for, it knows the story it's wanting to tell, it knows the character it's trying to portray. It doesn't necessarily have as much flair and distinctness as perhaps some of the other recent ones have, but everything it sets out to do, it does wonderfully. And with that, I think I've covered just about everything, so I will leave it there. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.